All right, today we're tackling a story that's a real paradox, one of the most powerful ones in history, actually. We're calling it The King Who Did Not Save Himself. And trust me, this story is going to turn everything you think you know about power and salvation completely upside down. Okay, first things first, we need to get one key idea straight. It's called dramatic irony. You've probably heard of it. It's that moment in a story where the characters have no clue what's really going on, but we, the audience, we know the whole truth. It creates this incredible tension, right? Well, that's the exact lens we're going to use to look at our story today. Let's think about a modern-day example. Picture this. It's September 11th, 2001. A firefighter, Stephen Siller, has just finished his shift. He could have just gone home. But then he hears the news, and he turns his truck around. When he gets stuck at a tunnel, he doesn't give up. He straps on 60 pounds of gear and runs through that tunnel, straight towards the danger. He ran to save others, and he never came back. Now, to someone who didn't know what was happening, his actions might have looked foolish. Why didn't he save himself? But we, as the audience to his story, we know the profound truth, don't we? His choice not to save himself was the very act that gave others a chance to live. And that paradox, well, that's the heart of the story we're exploring today. So, this powerful principle brings us to what might be the ultimate moment of dramatic irony in all of history, the crucifixion of Jesus. It's the moment a king chose not to save himself for the very purpose of saving everyone else. Let's dive into the first scene of this incredible irony. After Jesus is condemned to die, he's subjected to this cruel, humiliating mockery by the Roman soldiers. But what they intended as a sick joke, it accidentally becomes something else entirely. It becomes a profound, cosmic coronation. And listen, this wasn't just a couple of guards messing around. The records say an entire Roman cohort was gathered. We're talking up to 600 trained soldiers, all assembled to mock one single broken man. The scale of this moment is just, it's hard to even imagine. And here's where it gets wild. Every single act of mockery held a deeper truth the soldiers just couldn't see. They threw a purple robe on him, the color of royalty, as a joke. But in doing so, they were acknowledging him as the King of Kings. They twisted a crown out of thorns to mimic a victor's wreath. But those thorns, they symbolized the very curse of humanity he came to bear. They even stuck a flimsy reed in his hand as a mock scepter, accidentally pointing to a kingdom ruled not by force, but by sacrifice. And then they shouted it. Hail, King of the Jews! They thought this was the ultimate insult. But in this incredible moment of dramatic irony, the soldiers were unknowingly declaring the absolute truth. The coronation was complete. The irony only gets deeper in the next scene. Jesus, carrying his own cross, collapses from exhaustion. And his disciples, the ones who swore they'd die with him, nowhere to be found. So the soldiers do something unexpected. They just grab a random guy out of the crowd. I mean, look at this contrast. It's so stark. His closest followers pledged undying loyalty, and they all ran away. But this complete stranger, Simon of Cyrene, probably a traveler from North Africa just passing through, he gets forced into the most intimate act of discipleship imaginable. You know, the specific Greek word used here for forced is angereo. It was actually a legal term. It meant the Roman military had the right to compel anyone to carry a burden against their will. Simon had no choice. For a devout Jew, being forced to carry a bloody instrument of execution, it was the ultimate shame, a public humiliation. He must have felt like it was the unluckiest day of his life. But here comes the amazing twist. That moment of forced shame became the beginning of salvation for Simon's entire family. The reason the Bible specifically names his sons, Alexander and Rufus, is because they later became well-known, respected leaders in the early Christian community. The Apostle Paul even gives a personal shout-out to Rufus in the book of Romans and calls his mother, Simon's wife, a mother to him as well. So the irony is complete. The disciples who heard Jesus teach this directly, they ran from the cross. But Simon, the stranger, who was forced to carry it against his will, he ends up living out the very definition of discipleship. A burden that looked like a curse became a blessing that echoed through generations. All of this leads to the climax at Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And it's here, on the cross, that Jesus faces the most profound, the most ironic taunt of all. The religious leaders, people walking by, Even one of the criminals crucified next to him, they all shouted the same thing. He saved others, but he can't save himself. For them, this was it. This was the final, undeniable proof that he was a failure, a total fraud. But let's just pause for a second and really think about the question hanging over this whole scene. Is his inability to save himself, is that really proof of his failure? No, absolutely not. In their mockery, the crowd accidentally spoke the central truth of the entire story. The fact that he couldn't save himself wasn't proof of failure. That was the whole point. That was the method of salvation. See, he couldn't do both. He had to make a choice, save himself or save us. And that's what makes this story so powerful. He had the power to call down legions of angels, to come down from that cross and prove everyone wrong. But it wasn't the iron nails that held him there. It was his unwavering love and his absolute commitment to his purpose. He chose not to save himself so that he could save all of us. So what does this ancient story, filled with all this dramatic irony, what does it mean for us today? Let's get into the final, and maybe the most personal part of this exploration, the cross that we have to carry. The heart of this message really challenges our deepest instinct, doesn't it? Self-preservation. So we have to ask ourselves, what am I clinging to, trying to save myself? Is it my reputation, my pride, my need for control, or financial security? The king didn't save himself, but we often spend our whole lives trying to prove ourselves, protect ourselves, and save ourselves. And what about the burdens we didn't choose? Like Simon, we all have them. What's the forced cross in your life that you've been trying to avoid? Maybe it's a difficult responsibility, a broken relationship that needs forgiveness, or just a painful trial you're enduring. Simon's story reminds us that the very burden we think is a curse might just be the path to our greatest blessing. And this leaves us with one final challenging thought. The logic of this story turns our world completely upside down. It says that true strength isn't found in self-preservation, but in self-sacrifice. It says that a true king saves the world not by saving himself, but by giving himself away. And the question this story leads for us is this: are we willing to live by the logic of that kingdom?